In this video, we're going to work to get this old snowblower running that hasn't ran in a couple years, as well as go over some preventative maintenance stuff that you should be doing every year to keep these things running and reliable every season. And for those of you that are wondering why I'm posting a snowblower video in mid-September, as you can see, the leaves are starting to change, so that means in Minnesota we're probably going to get snow next week. And if you want to learn how to fix your vehicle, do budget restorations, troubleshoot equipment, and all sorts of other types of garage-related stuff, be sure to subscribe to Midwest Garage so you don't miss anything. So I got this snowblower from a friend at work. She couldn't get it running, and so it had sat for a couple of years. And so I'm guessing it just needs a carb clean, but we'll run through the entire thing. I'll go over preventative maintenance with you, stuff like that. And in order for a gasoline engine to run, they need air, spark, and fuel. Compression is another thing, but she said that it did run when they parked it, so I'm not too worried about compression. We'll get some gas in there, check the carburetor, check for spark, and go from there. So really important with small engines is you want to try your best to run gas in here that doesn't contain ethanol in it. Small engines don't respond well to gas with ethanol. And so you have to pay a little bit more, but it's definitely worth it. But it'll keep your machines running more reliable and running better. So I have some ethanol-free gasoline in the tank. Next is we want to check for spark. I don't have a new spark plug for this, so all I'm going to do is pull out the old one, check to see if it has spark. If so, I'll just reuse it for now. Every spark plug is a little bit different size, but this is a 13/16. And the spark plug looks to be in pretty good shape. So to check for spark, you just reconnect the plug wire and then touch this to a metal piece on the engine, such as the muffler. And then you shut the lights off and pull, and you should see spark between these two electrodes. So as you saw, we do have spark. So go ahead and put the spark plug back in. So now we know that we have clean fuel and we have spark, but before turning it over, I'm going to do a quick oil change and show you a couple other preventative maintenance things that have to be done. So when it comes to doing oil change, you just loosen up this right here. On some models it might be in the back, but you just loosen this up. And this is your oil drain. And it's handy to have a funnel here too, since it's in kind of a weird location. So then you pull your drain plug. Let some air through the top there. And we'll just drain this out. And then you want to put 5W30 back in the engine. You can use either conventional or synthetic oil, it doesn't really matter. And since we don't know exactly how much oil this engine takes, we'll just start with about 1/4 of a quart and slowly add and keep checking the dipstick level, so that way we don't overfill the engine. Another thing you want to be checking every year is the gear oil level within your gearbox here. A lot of them will have a drain plug somewhere on the bottom. If you don't have a drain plug, then don't worry about draining it, but at least crack that open and make sure that you're full. And most of these gearboxes take 75 weight 90 or 80 weight 90 gear oil. You'll have to check your owner's manual to see which one yours takes. And it's pretty dry in there, so I'm going to add a little bit of gear lube. Now the next thing you want to check is sometimes these shafts will have a Zerk fitting on them, and if they do, then you want to give them a couple pumps of grease each season before you start using it. This one does not have any Zerks, so we should be good. Also, another thing to note is you want to make sure that you have shear pins in here and not actual bolts, because if you have bolts in here and not shear pins, if you hit a big rock or a heavy duty chunk of ice, it won't shear off and you can actually tear up the gearbox. While I'm waiting for the oil to fill up again, I'm gonna pull this cover off and check our drive belts. So as you can see, these belts are very old. This one's really loose. So we will have to end up replacing these, just because it's a lot easier to do it now and not have to worry about it in the middle of winter when you actually need the machine. All right, looks like we're just to the add line, so I'll add a little bit more oil and then the oil change is done. So with our oil change done, spark, clean gas, and some of our other preventative maintenance issues figured out, I wanted to go start it, but it won't fire. So I'm gonna take a look at the carburetor, which is underneath this. So once you have your cover off, you can take your drain screw and unscrew that. And then we'll remove our bowl off the carburetor. And you can see inside of here how nasty that is. So this has never been cleaned out, and a lot of old gas sat in there, and so it's rusty and a lot of varnish in there. So we'll get all this cleaned up. You just want to use carb cleaner to sit in here and basically get rid of all this varnish and stuff that's built up, so that it doesn't break loose again and clog up the jets in the carburetor. So we'll start with that. This is just a really quick carb cleaning, see if that works. If not, then we'll pull the whole carburetor off and clean everything. All right, so it's not perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better than it was. So let's throw these back on and see if it'll start. I decided to check the release on the bottom of the bowl, and no fuel's coming out. So that means there's a clog somewhere up here. So we're gonna go ahead and take the carburetor all the way off. So there's got to be a blockage here where the fuel inlet is. Let's take it apart and take a look. So the problem's most likely with the float here, to where this doesn't move freely, and so no fuel is getting into the actual carburetor bowl. That should be an easy fix though. So now that it's clean, you see that the float moves a lot more, and it pulls this little pin right there, and that's what opens up so that fuel can get into the carburetor bowl and then into the carburetor. So let's throw it back on and fire up the snowblower. right, so today we covered all of the preventative maintenance you should be doing before the winter season starts, including an annual oil change, changing your spark plug, which I have yet to do, checking the gearbox oil in the gearbox, greasing any zerks, and also changing out the fuel filter, which this snowblower didn't have a fuel filter, so I will be putting an inline filter in. And then lastly, checking the belts. Replacing belts isn't something you're gonna have to do very often, but when it is time to change them, it's a pretty simple process. There's a few bolts to actually separate the drivetrain from the blower part, and the whole thing will separate, and then it's pretty easy to get in there and change all the belts out. So we covered all that, and we got this old pig running. It still runs a little bit rough yet, so I'm gonna do some adjustments on the carburetor, but it'll be running like a top in no time. And lastly, and most importantly, remember to try and not use gasoline that has ethanol in it. It's just a real pain in the butt with these small engines, and ethanol attracts water, which can gum up a carburetor really fast. So if you're not good at winterizing your equipment, especially, then do not use fuel with ethanol in it. I hope you guys like this video. Hope you learned something when it comes to preventative maintenance of a snowblower. I'm not a snowblower expert by any means, or a small engines expert, but this is stuff that I do to my own snowblower every spring when I'm done using it. If you winterize or summerize your equipment differently, let me know down in the comments below. I'm curious how people do it differently. My way isn't, the perfect or the best way to do it by any means, so share some ideas and we can all learn from each other. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.